Chinese budget electric cars are flooding into the European Union. Will the EU allow itself to become dependent on China? Let's hope not. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Electric cars from the Middle Kingdom that flooded Europe. And given how often they catch fire, it could be considered an act of war, at least an economic war. The fact is that the EU, being enlightened liberal thinkers, has set ambitious climate targets. By 2035, new fossil fuel cars will be banned, which means Europe needs electric cars, and China has plenty of them. That clean air. Take a deep breath. In 2019, Chinese electric cars held just 0.5% of the European market. By 2027, that share is expected to rise to 20%. Chinese electric cars are something special, like hotcakes, with the emphasis on hot. But it's not about the quality everyone craves from products labeled made in China. It's just that they're cheap, about 20% cheaper than European electric cars. According to the European Commission, you might say, sale a fire sale. Part of the cheapness is due to Chinese government subsidies for electric car manufacturers. Here's what European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says. Global markets are now flooded with cheaper Chinese electric cars, and their price is artificially low with huge government subsidies. This distorts our market. Another reason for low prices is slave labor. But this is slave labor for the sake of the environment. The EU is obviously concerned because this situation has happened before. The EU once had a thriving solar industry, until cheaper Chinese solar panels hit the market. By the way, most Chinese solar panels are the result of intellectual property stolen from the West, and they too are produced using slave labor. But it's slave labor for the sake of the environment. The few remaining solar panel manufacturers in the EU are now hurtling towards extinction, and thousands of jobs will be lost. But if a similar fate befalls the European automobile industry, we are talking about millions of jobs, not just a few thousand. Because, according to the European Commission, the automotive sector employs 13.8 million Europeans, which is 6.1% of total employment in the EU. That's if the same European Commission hadn't set such ambitious emissions targets that led to a market flooded with cheap Chinese electric cars. You may have shot yourself in the foot, but shot it for the sake of the environment. However, it looks like the EU may fight back this time. And just as we don't accept this distortion inside our market, we won't accept it outside either. Last September, it announced an investigation into Chinese electric cars and the possibility of imposing duties. The results of that investigation will be available no later than November. The US has already done something similar. America has a 27.5% duty on imported cars from China, so you won't see Chinese cars there. So it's good to see the US and its allies in Europe coming together for a common cause. Oh wait, Germany is in the way. Geez, that sounds familiar. Yes, Germany opposes duties. Why? Because China is a huge market for German cars. In 2020, 1 in 3 German cars were sold in China, and they are panicked that if the EU imposes duties on Chinese electric cars, the cheap people retaliate with sanctions against them. Their fears are justified. In 2020, when Australia called for an investigation into the origins of COVID-19, Beijing responded by effectively banning imports of Australian barley, beef and wine into China. In 2022, when Lithuanian authorities allowed Taiwan to open a de facto embassy, Beijing responded with sanctions against Lithuanian officials and pressured multinational companies to cut business ties with the European country. Because of this conflict, Lithuania's exports to China fell to almost zero in 2022. That's why French government officials warned that Berlin will try to undermine the EU's investigation into electric cars in an attempt to protect the interests of its automakers in China. But the fact is that even if Germany succeeds in derailing the EU investigation, the fate of German car companies in China is still sealed. These are not my words, but the words of an industry insider told Reuters. The situation is doomed, and in China the days of foreign brands are numbered, because this is a typical pattern of behavior. The CP lures Western companies with the promise of the Chinese market, steals their intellectual property, creates cheap Chinese knockoffs, and squeezes Western companies out. This is what happened to American Semiconductor Corporation after China's Sinovel stole their IP and squeezed them out of the market. Wall Street wrote it off as dead, and the company lost over $1 billion in shareholder value and 700 jobs. Not to worry, they were able to recover $59 million. Justice is being served. So, Germany is willing to put all of Europe at risk for the chance to profit in China for a couple more years. And this is coming from the same country that relied entirely on Russia for its energy supply, even after the annexation of Crimea. There seems to be a lesson about not doing business with authoritarian regimes where presidents have lifetime terms, unless it's for the sake of the environment. And now it's time to take a question from a member of the Army of 50 Cents China Uncensored fans. Tonight's question from Insider. Trump says if elected, he'll target excessive amounts of money from China. He will execute leaders of Mexican drug cartels. I wonder if he'll be able to do the same with Chinese drug company offenders and leaders of related cartels. That's a great question. It was in response to my recent issue about how the Biden administration seems to have covered up the extent of China's involvement in America's opioid crisis. So yes, as with the EU situation, the problem always goes back to the Chinese Communist Party. Until countries around the world unite to address this fundamental issue, nothing will change. The Chinese Communist Party is an authoritarian regime that seeks to become the sole superpower in the world. And that means weakening everyone else. So yes, Trump can send assassins to Mexico to take out cartel leaders, but China will still provide much of the drugs, engage in money laundering, and even supply weapons. The Xi is the final boss. Thanks for your question and support, Insider. And thanks for watching the video. Put a like, subscribe to the channel, and look forward to the next episodes. I wish everyone peace, prosperity, and freedom from the influence of harmful authoritarian regimes. All the best.